Good evening. Welcome to the QCIS channel. We're on this channel, you get a daily dose of science, technology, engineering, and math. My name is Leon Jones, and I have a good one for you. As you know, this is a channel we talk about mostly everything in STEM. So you've heard me talk a lot about my field, construction, civil engineering, but I'm going to talk about some tools that actually go into civil engineering, construction, and other engineering, and that's algebra. And what do we mean by algebra? There's different types of algebra. There's algebra 1, algebra 2, there's Boolean algebra, there is linear algebra. When you deal with a lot of matrices and eigenvectors, and basically when we talk about algebra, it's a mathematics. I call it is mathematics, but it's based on a lot of expressions, systems of unknowns, different properties. You're also solving word problems. And it's very important that you understand algebra before you get into trigonometry and other maths. Now, why is algebra important? Well, if you are going into engineering or engineering technology, most likely it's engineering technology, you're going to be taking physics. Now, what algebra teaches you how to do is manipulate equations. Now, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we're going to talk about what is algebra. Algebra is a branch of mathematics that deals with abstract systems as algebraic structures and a manipulation of expressions. And as you see right here, this is an example of an algebraic equation. You see, you have an x, and that x is your unknown. Now, how do I solve for x? Well, algebraically, we're going to do some manipulation. We're going to subtract 1 from both sides. I'm going to get 3x equals 9. And then I'm going to solve for x. And how do I solve for x? Well, divide both sides by 3, and I get 3. Now, if you want to make that work, to find out what x really is, to see if you did the equation right, you have 3, and you can plug it back into the equation. 3 times 3 is 9, plus 1 equals 10. Now, you can do the same thing with this problem. 4 squared divided by 2x minus 2. Well, this is another one. Now, you deal with a lot of variables in algebra, a lot of variables. So I'm going to go ahead and put on this PowerPoint, and we're going to go on and talk about algebra here, equations, because when we deal with algebra, I'm going to introduce you to some equations. Now, what you're going to do is we're going to define a variable. I have a 4-step problem solving plan, and then we're going to utilize the formula. Now, now we need to know what an equation is. So basically, an equation is a mathematical sentence that uses an equal sign. It can be used to represent the relationship between two quantities. They have the same value. Again, types, we have a true equation. Well, if the expressions on either side of the equal sign are equal, and this is what we have here, 10 plus 2 equals 8 plus 4, 12 equals 4, 1 plus 9 equals 10. That's true. Now, false. if expressions on either side of the equal sign are not equal. Well, 2 plus 8 does not equal 11. 11 plus 2 equals 13. 9 plus 5 equals 14. 11 plus 2 equals 13. 9 plus 5 equals 14. 13 does not equal 14. Now, that's the false equation. Now we have an open sentence. So if the equation contains one or more variables and maybe a true or false depending on the values of its variables. Well, you have x plus 5 equals 14. Now these are unknowns. And you have x plus 8 equals 13, or 8 plus x equals 13. Now, just from eyeballing everything, I already know what plus 5 equals 14. 9 plus 5 equals 14. 8 plus 5 equals 13. Now, if you look at both of those equations, they're true. Now, sample 1. Tell whether each equation is true, false, or open. Now, A, 12 plus 18 equals 15 plus 15. That's true. 5 times 7 equals 34. It's false. 5 times 7 equals 35. And then 3x plus 12 equals 48. What is that? That is an open equation. Why? Because it has a variable. There are the answers right there. Now, let me give you a real explanation here. Remember the rule on both sides of the equation when you have equations and you have answers to both equations? Well, the values can be different, but if the answers are equal on both sides of the equal sign, the answer is true. And you also have a false answer. You do multiplication. 5 times 7. Again, I explained it to you. 35 does not equal 34. And the variable is x, which makes that equation open. Now, there's something I can do, though, for that x. Now, I already know what the answer is right off the top of my head. But what can I do to find out what the value of x is? Well, I'm going to subtract both sides by 12, and then I'm going to get 3x equals 36. And then I'm going to divide both sides by 3, and x is going to give me 12. Now, how did I know that? Well, just from inspection, I know that there's another thing that I could have done here. This is what's so beautiful about algebra. I could have divided this whole equation by 3, and I could have gotten x plus 4 equals 16. I would have subtracted both sides by 4, and I would have gotten the same answer. They don't tell you that. That's a trick, particularly if you're going to be taking the FE exam and you see that. You can actually do that, and you're not scratching your head to find out what the answer is. Now, when I go ahead and substitute that 12 back in, 36 plus 12 equals 48. Now, the solution of an equation containing a variable is a value of the variable that makes the equation true. So you have to have a solution. Example, tell whether the given number is a solution of the equation. Is x equals 6 a solution of the equation? Well, if you plug 6 in, 6 minus 14 is not 5. 6 minus 14 is minus 8. So that is not a true answer. What about y equals 1/2? Now, you can have proper and improper fractions. Now, some people might get confused. But I can tell you right now, if you plug 1/2 into y, that's not going to give you a true equation. Why? Well, that's actually going to give you a true equation. Excuse me. See, 4 times 1/2? No, it's not. Because if I take half of 4, 4 divided by 2, 4 does not equal 10. So that's not going to work. So what about z equals 5, a solution? So I'll plug 5 in. 40 minus 6 equals 50? No. There you go. None of these are equal. Now, they did it a little differently than I did. I actually plugged 6 in to x, and you can do that. I actually plugged 1/2 into y, and I got 4 equals 10. No, that doesn't work. I plugged 5 in and got 40 minus 6 equals 50. That doesn't work. See, this is the thing about mathematics. There are more ways to skin a cat. 1/2 and 3/6. If you want to use numbers like that, you're going to come up with the same answer. Now, find the solution of each equation. 8b minus 3 equals 13. Now, what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to add 3 to both sides. So I'm going to get 8b equals 16. I'm going to solve for b. So when I get 8b equals 16, divide both sides by 8, b is going to equal 2. To check it, I'm going to plug 2 right back into b. 16 minus 3 equals 13. Now, what about this one right here? Minus 16 equals 26 minus 21x. Now, there are ways that you can skin a cat with that one. Now, for me, I'm going to go ahead and multiply both sides by -1, which is going to give me 16. I'll tell you why I did that in a minute. Because I'm going to clear the negative sign for 2 parts of the equation. And it's going to make it easier to solve. So once I do that, I'm going to have 16 minus 26 plus 21. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add 26 to both sides, because this is a negative, and I'm going to have 42 equals 21x. Divide both sides by 21, x equals 2. Now I'm doing them without a calculator, doing them by inspection. And I can do the same thing here, multiply everything by -1, because 2 negatives cancel and you get a positive, which is going to give me 8z plus 12 equals 4. Then I'm going to get 2 for the answer, because I'm going to take -16 and -16. Now you might think, well, it's going to give you a -28, but I divided everything by, I multiplied everything by -1 to cancel all signs, which gave me 8z plus 12 equals 4. So I'm going to have 8z equals 16, z is going to equal 2. And this is the fun thing. And if you do not know algebra, and I will say this, it is going to be very difficult to get into every other mathematics, because when you have chemistry, when you have physics, even if it says calculus base, you're going to be using basically, particularly if you're on the civil engineering side of things and on the mechanical engineering side of things, you're going to be using a lot of algebra and trigonometry, because you're going to be dealing with objects that are either static, which are stationary, or dynamic, which they move. And then you're going to be dealing with mechanics of materials. You're also going to be manipulating a lot of equations, especially when you get to fluid mechanics. This is the basics right here. A number of people don't pass these courses. They end up going to a major that I'm not going to say it's easy, but one thing about numbers, numbers are true. You get a solution. Let's look at the answers. And they did everything that I expected, everything. Now, I did all of them by inspection, but I knew what the answers were. They did the same thing. They subtracted, added 3 to both sides. I got 2. They did it a little differently than what I did it. I just multiplied everything by -1, and I still got 2. I did the same thing here as well. This is what they mean by manipulating answers here. All right, use the table to find the solution of each equation. Now, I don't need to use a table, but to solve this equation, 7x plus 10 equals 45. What am I going to do? Subtract 10 from both sides of the equation, which is going to give me 7x equals 35. Divide both sides by 7. And what I'm going to get, my answer is going to be 5. And if I want to check it, I'm going to plug 5 right back into where x is. And I'm going to get 35 plus 10 equals 45. Same thing I'm going to do here. I can tell you right now by inspection, the answer is going to be 1. Now, how did I get 1? Well, I've subtracted 14 from both sides. So 7x equals 7. Answer is going to be 1. Plug 1 in to x. And this is what you need to learn how to do. Learn how to substitute your answer back into the original equation. You're going to have to do that when you have a system of 2 and 3 equations. So when I plug 1 into equation B, I'm going to have 7x plus 14 equals 21. And the same thing here. Now, they may get you, they may switch the question around. Remember, math is cumulative and associative. So 12 equals 4x plus 8. Now, there's something that I could have done with this equation and this equation. If I wanted to get rid of the 7s, divide everything by 7, and I would add x plus 2 equals 3. Here I can do the same thing. I'm just going to go through and divide everything by 4. So I'm going to get 3 equals x plus 2. Answer is going to be 1. And here's how I'm going to prove it. I'm going to subtract 8 from both sides. This is a trick you need to know, and you can do it quickly. Now let's see what they have as far as the answer. They did it a different way. They used the table. I said I wasn't going to use the table. I didn't need to use the table. But the table just shows you how they got everything. They're using it for true and false. And you can see that whatever you plug in, you're not going to get the right answer, except for this one. Reason why I didn't use the table, because I knew they were going to go numerically. That just takes too long. Because if you're taking an FE exam and you have an equation, you need to spit it out really quickly. Here they see, use the table as well. And it'd be this equation right here. Same thing here. This equation right here. Use the table to find 2 consecutive integers between which the solution lies. Well, I'm just going to go ahead and just solve everything. And I'm just going to add 20 to both sides. And I'm going to get 8x equals 57. And generally, what is close to 57? it's going to be 6. It's going to actually be 7. So it's going to be, so if I have 57, because I'm getting 8x equals 57. So if I divide both sides by 8, I'm going to come up with 7 1/8. 7 1/8, and that's going to give me 57/8. Now I did that in my head. I'm going to do the same thing here. 3x equals 32. And this is what they're talking about, integers. Integers are not whole numbers. Let's see what they did in the table. This is how they did it. 36 and 44. And they're using equalities and inequalities. Sample 6, find a solution of each equation using mental math or table if the solution lies between two consecutive integers. 3x minus 9 equals 14. 17 equals 9 plus minus x. 8 equals 21 minus 7x. Let's see what they did. Well, they have 7 and 8. So 7 is less than x, which is less than 8. So what do they find here? They found 12 and 15. Now I normally would go ahead and just solve for everything. Same thing here, they found 17 and 18. And they found 14 and 7. Now, you also have word problems, and that translates sentences to equations. Number 1, you use variables to represent the unspecified numbers or measures referred to in a sentence or problem. And then you write the verbal expressions as algebraic expressions. Verbal expressions that suggest the equal sign, we have is equal to, is as much as, equals, is the same as, is identical to. And for individuals in high school, beware those words because they're generally on a test. So write an equation for each sentence. 15 times the number of A is equal to 4 times the number of B and C. So 15 times the number of A, you're probably looking 15A is equal to 4x plus B plus C, something like that. Then you're going to have 3 times x subtracted from 57 equals 59. The difference, when you have the difference of subtraction, the difference of 10 and the number is 5. And just like I said, and that's how you write up all of the word problems. Again, when we deal with algebra, we're dealing with something that is variables. We're using variables to represent the unspecified numbers or measures referred to in a sentence or a problem. But when we talk about the meaning of algebra, it's a branch of mathematics that involves algebra as dealing with expressions, variables, and word problems. And again, when we deal with algebra, this is the first part of algebra, but it's important that you understand how to solve these equations because you're going to have equations of a line in algebra. You're going to have to solve inequalities. you may have two variables, X and Y. You may have X, Y, and Z. This is when you get into your 2 and 3 variables and systems of equations. Now, there are calculators to figure everything out, but I always believe that if you understand mathematics by hand, it's going to be much easier for you to grasp the concept. See, we have a lot of convenience and a lot of technology, but do you understand what goes into the concept? Do you understand how to manipulate the formulas? There may be a physics problem or mechanics problem, like kinetic energy equals 1/2 mv squared. Well, you may think you're looking for kinetic energy. Well, they could give you the kinetic energy. You might have to find the variable that's in the equation to get the kinetic energy. So you're going to have to manipulate the formulas. Ohm's law. When you have V equals I times R, what is I? You have resistance and you have current, which each equals voltage. That's Ohm's law. You're going to have to use algebra when you're looking at series and parallel circuits. What is the in thermodynamics? P1 V1 T1 equals P2 V2 T2. But what are those variables? Well, the P is your pressure, the V is your volume, your T is your temperature. What about the Boltzmann constant? What about Avogadro's number? Because you also, when it comes to algebra, you have your constants. The ideal gas constant, I believe it's 8.3. That's a constant you're going to have to plug into some equations. And even when you're doing conversions, you're going to do some mathematics. That's why I like to teach the basics. Once you understand the basics, everything builds off of the basics. That's what people don't know. And you don't have to be a genius. Just know the concepts. In fact, when it comes to mathematics in general, there are basically 4 operations that you use: addition, multiplication, subtraction, and division. I know when you take courses like accounting, you use a little bit of algebra. Mathematics is very, very important. This is why I developed the STEM channel, formerly the Mind of STEM. Because if you want to get into a career that deals with STEM, you need to understand the basics of mathematics. And mathematics is fun. Now, what I'm going to work on is getting a blackboard or trying to use whiteboard here in Zoom so I can actually solve some of these problems for you. Now, I went through the PowerPoint. The PowerPoint wasn't my favorite because I wanted to actually solve the problems for you so you can see how I got all of the solutions and plugged all of the solutions back in. Because the good thing about math, you learn by repetition. And remember this, repetition is the mother of all teaching. And that concludes this topic on algebra and introduction to equations. Like what I just presented, please comment, share, and subscribe. And if you're looking for some political and social content, check out my main channel, the 411 Talk Zone radio show channel. And I generally put videos out every Wednesday on the 401 Talk Zone radio show channel. Here's where you can find me on YouTube for the 401 Talk Zone radio show. You can find me on YouTube, Rumble, Truth Social, and X, which is formerly Twitter. Now, here on the QCIS channel, you can find me on YouTube, LinkedIn, and also X, formerly Twitter. Once again, thank you for viewing this content on algebra, an introduction to equations from the QCIS channel. We're on this channel, you get a daily dose of science, technology, engineering, and math. Till next time, my name is Leon Jones. I want you all to have a wonderful and gracious evening.